So this is Jake Jolliff from Yonder Mountain String Band and Jacob Jolliff Band. And yeah. So how old were you when you started playing?
I was 7, and my dad, I was homeschooled, and my dad, as part of my schoolwork, started me playing an instrument. He didn't insist upon any one instrument, but I guess from what I'm told, I picked the mandolin, even though I don't remember picking it, but I haven't picked anything else since. And I spent about 6 months kind of hating it. I would do my required 10 minutes a day and nothing else, but nevertheless, I did it religiously every day, so I got pretty good doing 10 minutes a day, and then or decent, and then after about 6 months, all of a sudden something just switched in my brain, and I started to love it, and then practiced multiple hours a day, and that's basically how it's been ever since. And I'm 30 now, so it was 23 years ago.
Did your dad play bluegrass before?
He does, yeah. He mostly is a banjo player. He plays all the bluegrass instruments, plays bass and guitar and fiddle and mandolin, and we played in a band for a long time. We played like as a duo for a while. Had a group with my mom, played guitar and sang. And then when I was sort of later in middle school and in high school, for the first couple years of high school, we had a bluegrass gospel group, which was him and I, banjo and mandolin, and then we were doing all the singing. I was singing tenor, or something higher than tenor, because I was a little kid, and then we had a rhythm guitar player and a bass player that would play with us on the festivals and stuff. So it was a full band. Yeah.
Did you always want to play bluegrass?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the only thing really on my radar when I was that age.
Yeah.
That was when it was around the house, and I loved it for sure. My first real big hero was, well, I guess Bill Monroe for probably a year or two, but then Ronnie McCurry was kind of the biggest influence for a long time, and it was, and by like high school or something, I started to venture into some other styles and stuff. But still, I consider myself, most adept at playing bluegrass, for sure. Yeah.
So you said you've only lived here for about 5 years?
Yeah, I moved here in April 2014, so it'll be 5 years on April 1st. Yeah.
Have you seen the bluegrass scene in New York evolve since you've been here?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was really good when I first moved. The Punch Brothers were, more of them were here at that time, and seemed to be more part of the scene. Obviously they've mostly moved away, at least Gnome and Critter have. Thiele's here still, but and Paul moved away, obviously. But when I moved here, a bunch of other really good musicians had moved within a year or two before, and would follow a year or two after. So yeah, I have seen it evolve a lot with some mainstays like Michael Daves and Rob Hecht has been here since I've known him, and a few others too. Yeah.
But there have been like a lot of people like who are younger than most people who play. Like bluegrass generally is like older people playing.
Sure.
Why do you think so many younger people are playing now?
I think probably just that it's a little bit more in pop culture through guys like Thiele and Bela, and to some degree because of sort of the indie rock side of things like Mumford & Sons and Old Crow Medicine Show and stuff like that. But I think, honestly, Thiele is a lot of it, and the scene that surrounds him, and this sort of changing image of acoustic musicians from maybe some sort of incorrect sort of backwoods stereotype, which has never really been the case, but still kind of been part of the stereotype, to something that's a little bit more respectable. I don't think that it ever wasn't respectable, but the shift in the perception, I think that's a lot of it, and also it being studied at the collegiate level a little more, places like Berkeley and East Tennessee State and a couple other programs in colleges.
Why are you drawn to bluegrass?
I'm pretty steeped in it at this point. I wouldn't say that it's a little hard to put my finger on draws to it, probably because they were. I'm sure I have them, but they're sort of so inherent at this point.
Yeah.
To me, it's like the sound of my youth, but also the sound of my high school and college, and also like you can only have one first language, and so it's hard for me to even see it with much perspective, probably.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lack of pretension to my favorite bluegrass bands, artists named Del McCoury, and I like that. I like how there's an equalizing thing that happens in a bluegrass jam where you can have really prodigious, amazing players interacting with beginners, but you can all be playing the same tunes, and that's kind of a cool aspect. It's a little, the barriers to entry are a little higher in jazz. Just even being able to play through a standard is a little bit more involved than learning. I wonder how the old folks are at home, or what's one that's even easier. I'm going back to old Kentucky or something. It's you can play an instrument for a few months and be able to learn a lot of bluegrass tunes, which is not the case with a lot of styles.
Yeah, you say you know 3 chords.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
So you play in Yonder Mountain String Band now?
Mm-hmm.
How did you go from playing such like a traditional style of music to a jam band?
I've been in kind of new acoustic groups for all. Like, for instance, Joy Kilsar was the group I used to be in. What we did was by no means straight ahead bluegrass. In some ways, it was even farther away from bluegrass than what Yonder does.
Yeah.
Way more along the lines of Punch Brothers and more arranged kind of music. But that band disbanded in May 2014, and I got the call from Yonder a couple weeks later. So it was kind of just providence that it worked out as well as it did, and it's not often that good mandolin gigs become available. So I feel fortunate that one fell into my lap such that it did. So that's kind of how it happened. There was a gradual thing. They asked me to do a 2 or 3 week tour and a recording session for their new record, and that went well. And then somewhere along that way, they asked me to do the rest of the year, the rest of 2014, and then later that year, they asked me to kind of be a more permanent member. So, and then the rest is history. So,
do you have any like jam band influences?
Not a huge amount, to be totally honest. There's a lot of musicians I really respect that exist in that scene. Sam Bush, by no means only a jam band musician, but he has been in and out of that scene. The guys in Aquarium Rescue Unit, Matt Mundy, O'Teal, Jimmy Herring. Those are some amazing jam band, if you want to call them that, jam band musicians. The really good musicians in that scene, I wouldn't even necessarily put the label of jam band. I feel like that's a little too vague. There are jazz musicians and bluegrass musicians and funk musicians that play in the sort of jam band scene in terms of like play for that fan base. But I would say that the really good ones tend to have their grounding in a style that's a little bit more specific, jazz, bluegrass, something like that.
Okay, I'm really sorry about this next question.
No, it's fine.
If you could describe bluegrass in one word.
Mandolin.
Okay. That's a good answer.
I might be able to take a pass on that one.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, yeah.
Did you always want to, is mandolin the one instrument you would choose to play now if you could choose another instrument?
That's a good question. I often think that if I could be, proficient at one instrument, that the piano would be a fun one to be good at. Well, the question was, why would I choose the mandolin, or
would there be another instrument you choose?
Plenty of others I'm interested in. In fact, sometimes people, say, Jake, you really need a hobby. And the first thing I think to myself is, yeah, it's true. Maybe I should work on the guitar more. The first thing I always think is another instrument. And if I had all the time in the world, probably just practice one instrument after another.
Do you have any standout moments or experiences playing?
Oh, tons, yeah. Some are kind of predictable, particularly epic gig, festival, or getting to meet some of my heroes and play with them when I was younger, and or more recently, I remember a couple years ago at Telluride. Not to say this is a standout musical experience, but I was playing at Telluride with Yonder, and Sam Bush came on stage to sit in with us, and he leaned over and told me that he had been researching finding a clip-on man bun to clip onto his hair to have on stage when he walked on stage, which I thought that was pretty great that that's somewhere in Sam Bush's search history. But but some of the best musical experience could just be a jam with a friend, where you're really kind of communicating, and for instance, played a really fun house concert 3 nights ago that you were at with Grant, and there were moments there when I was like, wow, this is really the life, just because it was such a fun show, and I love playing with Grant. And to me, it's just as likely to have a good time just playing with a friend of mine. Yeah. To be honest. Yeah.
Did you grow up playing with a lot of kids your own age, or did you mainly play with adults?
Not as much as I wanted to when I was young, and there was a time when I was really young when I didn't feel like I had very many friends that played. And I remember that being kind of lonely. But from when I was 10 or 11, or maybe a little older, I had quite a few friends. Some of them I wouldn't see that often, maybe once every few months, but I would be something to look forward to. Alex, one of them, for sure. I think we met when he was 8 or 9, and I was like 12. Dominic, Leslie, amazing mandolinist. We've known each other since we were probably 14. Sarah Jarose, we all met when we were young, and I met Sierra Hull. I think not until college, but still that's a while ago now. And definitely some other kids too that I played with then that don't necessarily play for a living now, but I did have a bit of a community around it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for talking to me.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.